Where the video games? Where my video? Oh.
There's lots of forgotten video games out there. Most of them are terrible, but these are good. And now, you have to hear about them. Icy Tower. Now I remember back in the day, this dude right here with the ridiculous beanie cap and the clothes that are like 50 sizes too big for him, he was the coolest dude on the planet. Everybody wanted to be like him. Including me, because I dressed exactly like him in 8th grade. Now the basis of the game is quite simple. You're a guy trying to get to the top of Icy Tower the best way you know how. By jumping on your moon boots. The reason you go back to like old platformers like Mario and all that other stuff and notice that they play so fluidly has to do with how quickly you speed up and slow down your character. And in Icy Tower, you've got that fantastic momentum that gives a lot of weight and movement to everything that you're doing. And considering that this game was probably one of the first roguelikes ever, takes place in a dungeon, procedurally generated, always endless and never-ending, this is probably one of the most addictive games of that era, and I would say, still good today. Dink Smallwood was a different story. In the era of action RPGs, you had your Diablos, you had a little bit of Zelda in there, but nobody ever talked about Dink Smallwood, which is a real shame, because it was one of the most violent, hilarious, and sardonic action RPGs of that era. You play a guy named Dink, your village gets destroyed, it's basically like the opening to A New Hope, and you go around trying to fight the evil man named Seth, who was behind it all. Now the gameplay itself is rudimentary. It's an action RPG in pretty much everything, and unlike Diablo, which had a really nice fluid combat to it, this one feels decidedly clunky. Like, it feels like you're just kind of going like, you're beating somebody with like the head of a shoe rather than any weapon. The writing is on point, the characters are clever, and it's not even that long. Like, you could beat this whole game in an afternoon and still have plenty of time to go play better games, such as... Now we're getting into the good stuff. Let me tell you about Candystand and Nabiscoworld. See, it comes from the era of advert games. The whole purpose of this was to design a video game based solely on the ability of how well it can sell you a product. And in the case of Candystand.com, it was all about candy. We're talking lifesavers, Oreos, cream savers. Oh God, help us, the cream savers! The aesthetic was a 2.5D sprite-based art style that looks great today. I mean, if you look at these models right now, they look like they were ripped out like a Mortal Kombat game or something, but when you play them in the game, they're extremely fluid, and nowhere is this better seen than mini golf. It had a full 18 holes, and every single one of these courses was highly detailed and creative. There was one level that was like a giant mouth that you had to punch things into, a Kool-Aid level that was like a skateboard park, and probably the best or most frustrating of it all, giant cheese. Yes, these games were basically giant advertisements. That's what they were made for. They had a platformer that was a ripoff of Pitfall for the Atari 2600. It looked like Indiana Jones, because it probably was Indiana Jones in everything but name. And believe it or not, they even had an FPS game. Bro, imagine little old you, little small you in the early 2000s saying, oh my God, a fully 3D FPS game where I can shoot dudes and win a bunch of Oreos in the process. I mean, it was insane. Now, the era of the advert game now is pretty much gone. I think Chex Quest had something similar to it that had a pretty similar cult following, but nobody ever talks about these games anymore, man, and it's a shame because there's so much love and attention in them that can still be had today. But don't just take it from me. Play them for yourself. They're all free. And let's be honest, what are you doing anyway? I wish that you could feel me.